Hello, BookTube. Well, despite the chill in the air, a definite nip in the air this morning, I went out to do errands. First thing, very early. And when those errands were halfway done and I needed a little pick-me-up and needed a little reward to myself, I went to the Brattle Bookshop. And that presents a hardship, which might be a little odd to some of you who don't know what I'm talking about. You might wonder why the outside weather prevents a hardship at a bookstore. The Brattle is a used bookstore in downtown Boston, and they're great. Always turning over their stock. A full shop, 2 floors of general purpose used books at reasonable prices, and then a 3rd floor of the kind of rare and antiquarian things. The reason the weather plays in is because the Brattle also has a sale lot next door. Thousands more books. Not just 1 cart or 2, thousands more, an entire lot of used books for $1, $3, or $5. And they're not organized in any way except by price. So it's a browser's paradise, which is ordinarily a wonderful thing, except when it's cold outside. When it's cold outside, it's no longer a browser's paradise. It's more like a browser's purgatorio. I have been out in the Brattle sale lot in all weathers, at all times. I have seen the worst of it, where you are just browsing the carts, and I myself lose track of how bad it is. Sometimes lightly snowing, sometimes bitterly cold or windy, and it isn't until you stagger back inside that you realize how much your body has been paying for your book addiction. but despite the fact that it was chilly, I couldn't not go, especially with all of this read what you own madness going through our little corner of BookTube. Now with people swearing off going out and buying books, what on earth? My only consolation of watching one video after another of people's BookTube channels I love saying, well, I'm going to read what I own for 100 books before I buy another book. My only consolation is that I've got your number. All of you people are as hopeless as I am. You will not last. You will not last. You will be buying books in no time at all. But I have no such vow. I am never going to make such a madcap vow. So I went and got a pile of books. And I want to show them to you. I found one mass market paperback this time. In fact, was this the only paperback? Yes, it was. Well, I would explain why it was so heavy lugging it around. The problem with doing Brattle fairly early in the day is that I've got to lug around my proceeds to every other errand that I run. But fortunately, I'm a sexy 28-year-old with 8-pack abs and A-frame shoulders, so it wasn't that much of a strain. Now, this first one is something that I think a lot of you out there, some of you of a certain age, especially in the UK, are probably going to tisk. You're probably going to tell me I should long since have read either this author or at least this book by this author. But I didn't. I haven't. There are plenty of lacuna in my reading. And this is Geoffrey Household, and it's his book Rogue Male. Crosshairs on Hitler there. I want to keep the bean in the picture. So we'll do it this way. This is the thing that attracted me to it. I saw it on a cart, and I saw the green spine with the penguin logo. And I have had tremendous luck with these green spine penguin logo crime and thriller novels. They're never very long, and I've had tremendous luck with them. Whoever was editing this line back in whenever this was, when did this edition come out? This book was copyrighted in 1939, but this edition came out in 1967. Yeah, 1967, 1968, something like that. Oh no, this was a 1970s reprint. So it's had a lot of reprints. It's had a lot of life to it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was made into a movie or TV show of some kind. The minute that I was sort of flipping through it on the way back from the shop, I realized that I know this author was once upon a time kind of famous, and that this book is probably one of his best known books. I have never read it. I will get to it. Now that I have it, I will get to it. This next one, beautiful little hardcover. I am assuming that I will encounter, this is book 3 in a trilogy. I'm assuming I will encounter them all. This is by Evelyn Waugh, and this is Unconditional Surrender, which is the 3rd book in the Sword of Honor trilogy. So we've followed our main character for 2 books and lots of extremely disillusioning adventures. And I don't mind reading this out of order. I had a Sword of Honor omnibus edition that I got at the Brattle probably 30 years ago, a paperback omnibus edition. And I read these things for the first time in that omnibus edition. So I read in just one volume. They aren't long novels, so it's easy to put them in one volume. And I read them all in that volume, and I loved it, as I love almost everything by this author. But that volume fell apart. It was pretty sturdy, too. It was a UK trade paperback. It fell apart. So I haven't had any of these in quite some time. Glad to find this. I'll gladly give it a reread apart from the first two volumes if that's what I have to do. But typically you won't find something like this with a neat library jacket on there. Typically you won't find something like this at the Brattle unless the other two volumes are going to show up. And if I start into this, maybe give it 70 or 80 pages, if I start into it and think, no, I do feel like I'm late to the party here. I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I need the other two volumes. So this was $1. A, so I'm not out much. And B, there are plenty of Sword of Honor omnibus editions. There was probably one at the shop if I shopped around inside. There's probably one at the shop. There are plenty to find. If I read this and think, okay, well, I don't want to read this out of order, but now my taste is whetted and I do want to read this trilogy again, then I'll know what to do. I'm not out much money. And this next one, a gamble. Just like getting the third volume in a trilogy when you're not sure if you're going to see the other two. That's the kind of a gamble you can take at the Brattle because it's so cheap out in the sale lot. The coin that I paid in out in the sale lot, I'm sure today, was the health of my skin cells because it was really cold. But it wasn't as cold as it's going to get. I'm still going to be out there. You can find me out there in all weathers. But this other one is a gamble too. This is a science fiction author because it's New World's November. And it's a science fiction author I've never particularly liked, and that's going to be Heresy. He has huge numbers of fans. I liked the books by him that you would expect I would like, but never anything else. And as a result, most of the anything else, I've only read once. And that is Brian Aldiss. This is New Arrivals, Old Encounters. I think this is probably a British cover? That doesn't strike me as an American thing at all. What have we got here? Some sort of sales slip. But it's just a completely generic sales slip, so there's no information on it at all, except that whoever bought it in '86. But no shop name, no nothing like that. I'll leave that for the bookmark. But I know some Brian Aldiss stories. This has Small Stones of Tufu. I've read that. It has The Impossible Puppet Show. I've read that one. I think I read One Blink of the Moon. But most of these things I won't remember. I might have read them in an anthology, but I won't remember them. So I'll give it a try. And we will see. I like this author wrote a series that I liked. But even the series I haven't revisited. In the short fiction, oh no, not at all. I know it's heresy on BookTube when talking about science fiction, but lots and lots of stuff that was either new wave science fiction or new wave adjacent science fiction, which I think you would consider Brian Aldiss, never really did much for me. I know that's bad. let's just move on. We'll move on to very, very meat and potatoes, straight-laced science fiction. A classic and one of the follow-ups to the classic. This is Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead, Orson Scott Card. And I would not have got this. I have an ebook of Ender's Game, and the follow-ups to Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead or whatever, never really did anything for me. I know there are a lot of people. Well, I've known some science fiction aficionados who will maintain that Speaker for the Dead is a better book than Ender's Game. I've never seen that myself, but I haven't read it I haven't reread it in quite some time. I think this is a science fiction book club edition. I mean, it even says so. Science Fiction Book Club's 60th anniversary collection. And I've never seen this before. I've never seen this cover before. I've never seen these two in one book before, so I grabbed it. I don't have a hardcover copy of either one of these things, so. And maybe like with Brian Aldiss, I will. Well, it's New World's November, but also maybe like Brian Aldiss, I will sort of give this another try, especially Speaker for the Dead. In fact, in honor of Unconditional Surrender being the third book in a trilogy, I may just read Speaker for the Dead in this volume without rereading Ender's Game. just to see how it works, how it breathes and lives as a book on its own. Then we have a piece of nonfiction. I grab these whenever I see them. I am just a sucker for this sort of thing. This is by Graham Phillips and Martin Keatman, and it is The Shakespeare Conspiracy. Yet another book about the mysterious William Shakespeare, the man from Stratford, and whether or not it is possible that he could have written the plays that bear Shakespeare's name. I have read a million of these books, but there are a million more to read. I could not possibly read them all. And I don't think I've ever encountered this thing before. It isn't long. I imagine that it would be a slightly higher profile in the Shakespeare Conspiracy books that I have read if it were all that good. So it's probably not. There's probably a reason why I've never heard of it. But I don't need much incentive to read up on the subject. And I have found that in books like this, even if the book is not all that good, notice the complete lack of blurbs on the back. I've noticed that even if the book is not all that good, sometimes when sifting through the evidence, authors will make one or two good points. They'll make a point that I haven't heard somebody else make on the subject. Which is fine by me. I'm willing to read the book for that point and just hope that it's there. This next one is from before we were talking to each other. It's a new release. It was $1, so I grabbed it. I remember it. I don't think I ever actually read it. I'm pretty sure I didn't review it. Well, I want to give it a try, though, especially since the subject is on my mind. This is David Green's book, Republic of Spin, which is his kind of media-focused history of the United States presidency, the office of the presidency, mainly in the 20th century, mainly Theodore Roosevelt on down to Obama. I think this ends with Obama. And it's on my mind because I am, and very likely, there's a very good chance that I will soon be the author of a book on the American presidency. As amazing as that is for me to say, even now, Alex Sorondo has started a crowdfunder to produce an ebook called The Books of Power, which is a collection of reviews and essays that I've done about the American presidency over the years in every venue under the sun. I'm pretty sure that I can make the time to do an original introduction, maybe an original piece in there as well. And if that all works out and the end product looks professional, looks good, looks like I wouldn't mind having my name on it, then we will publish it and you'll be able to buy a copy. If you do, you will get a copy of the ebook, the file, if you join the crowdfunder. Anyway, you'll get that anyway. But if the crowdfunder is successful, then and the end product is I like the cut of its jib, then it will be a book, and that's kind of amazing. And of course, it's got me thinking of the U.S. presidency all over again. So I'll give this a try and see. I don't imagine that it'll take much time for me to know whether or not I have read it. It'll just be a little amount of time. I don't think I have, though. I don't think I ever got around to it. In 2016, I probably swore off reading books on the U.S. presidency. Could be wrong about that. Could be wrong about that. Then this next one, very strange purchase on my part. I don't usually do this. These are 2 volumes. They were $1 a piece. So I got them because they are unfamiliar to me, believe it or not. This is, I think this is Heritage Press. This is a 2-volume box set, slipcase, of the Heritage Press Herodotus. Am I right about that? Let's see. I got it mainly because these are lovely. They're just beautiful. You've got this vaguely Greco design, and you've got the maps, and there are not only illustrations all throughout, but also these marginal descriptions of where we are in the narrative, what's going on in the narrative. Am I right that this is Heritage Press? Let's see. Yes, this is Heritage Press, and this is translated by Harry Carter, whose translation of Herodotus I have never read. I've read his translation of Erasmus's The Praise of Folly, and I tried to make my way through. He was a big enthusiast for type font, typefaces, typography, that sort of thing, and I know that has devoted fans. I could not care less, which is kind of odd, I know, because it's the typography that's giving me the books that I'm reading and loving, but I could not care less what font that is. I could not care less. And that's all that he cared about. And I tried to get through one of his books. He wrote a whole bunch of books on the subject of typography. I tried to get through one of them and just couldn't do it. But I did read his translation of Erasmus. But I've never read his Herodotus. And for some reason, Heritage Press decided to do this 2 volumes each in their own slipcase instead of, one big volume. And I don't know if the Harry Carter translation of Herodotus has ever been done in 1 volume. It might not have been. It might not be all that good. Again, when the prices are so cheap, you can take a flyer on just about anything that strikes your fancy if you are tough enough to browse around out in the sale lot. And then this last thing, which I could not pass up. I've read it, but I've never owned a copy. And it's not in, as far as I know, it's not in any kind of classic genre, Oxford or Penguin or Once Upon a Time, the old, like the old Dover run or anything like that. I don't think anyone thinks of this as a literary classic, and they should. This is George Cavendish, and this is his biography of Cardinal Wolsey. It's a slightly oversized hardcover here with a very old thing with the deckled edges. It's got a whole bunch of black and white portraits all throughout that are covered in this thin onion skin, so you know that they're kind of old. So when did this come out? 1945? Is that right? So there were 1,030 copies of this. And it is just the book that Cavendish wrote on Wolsey. There's no introduction. I doubt very much that there's any notes. No, there's no notes. There's nothing like this. This is just the text. And there's something kind of pleasingly old-timey about an old, ornate book like this, to read it like this. And I haven't read Cavendish in quite some time. I was very tempted when I was rereading Wolf Hall last year, because Cavendish was in Wolsey's household. He was a body servant to Thomas Wolsey, so he was with him all the time, and did not flee when the arm of Henry VIII's wrath came down upon Cardinal Wolsey. Several of the people that were in his orbit, whose lives had been made immeasurably better by him, fled like rats out of a sinking ship. They fled, and Cavendish did not. He stuck around. He was even deposed by a court of inquiry that Henry VIII set up. He was deposed about Wolsey, knowing perfectly well that to speak well of Wolsey was very dangerous at that moment. Very dangerous. This is why he couldn't publish this thing in his lifetime. But he was called in front of that court to talk about what the cardinal said in his last days, what the cardinal did in his last days. Wolsey knew what he was headed. He was summoned back to London. He knew what he was headed for. If he hadn't died on the way, he knew what he was headed for. A long stay in the Tower of London, and then, amazingly, the spectacle of a Christian king of England beheading an archbishop. That would certainly have happened. Henry would certainly have done that, even though he owed everything to Wolsey. All of his finances, his international reputation, his international standing, he owed it all to Wolsey. What he didn't owe to his father, he owed to Wolsey. But he would have done that, and no one knew that better than Wolsey. And this kangaroo court wanted to know, did he say anything incriminating? How much more can we blacken his name? Cavendish stood in front of them and would not do it. He answered all of their questions very courteously and at great detail, but he would not blacken the cardinal's name. He would not turn on his old employer. The one account, it's apocryphal, but it could be true. It says that when his deposition was over, his inquisitors stood and applauded, warmly applauded him, because he had shown rectitude. He had shown the proper amount of gratitude for someone who did so much for him. And it's going to be fascinating to see that in this volume. This is everything. This is not just little bits and pieces. This is the whole of the thing. And Cavendish shows up as a kind of furtive side figure in Wolf Hall. But I guarantee you, was not a furtive side figure in Hilary Mantel's preparation for writing Wolf Hall. You have to know this book. To write about the early reign of King Henry VIII, you have to know this book. Especially if you're going to write a biography of Wolsey, which hasn't been done in too long a time. There hasn't been a big popular biography of him in 35 years. But this is indispensable if you're going to do that. Cavendish had no reason whatsoever to lie, and no reason whatsoever to gild the lily either. He was surrounded by people who knew Wolsey, and he was friends with people who knew Wolsey. He even married Thomas More's niece. He knew Thomas Cromwell quite well. So lying about Wolsey, I mean, he couldn't publish his book in his lifetime, but the manuscript of it circulated everywhere. He couldn't get away with lying about anything to people who had been there. So it's an invaluable historical research. One of the only, I'm trying to think now if there's really any other good example of what we would actually call a biography. This is actually a biography. I think this might be one of the earliest ones in English history. Either way, there's an allure that I feel to reading this thing in a sort of a very old, illustrated hardcover. So I grabbed this, and that is it. That is the Brattle. I once again don't want to block the bean, but we have George Cavendish's Life of Wolsey. I had this once upon a time in a little hardcover. I don't know what happened to that hardcover. I don't think I have it anymore. But it wouldn't be congenial to read anyway, and it wouldn't take a pounding. This will take a read. If I'm careful, it might take 2 reads. I wish I could find some sort of way. There must be a way. Librarians probably know. There must be a way to protect this. It doesn't have a dust jacket. So I can't use one of those plastic library Mylar dust jacket protectors. I don't want to make a dust jacket to put over this thing. There must be a way to protect this. Something that libraries do to protect these, but I don't know what it is. But I'll be gentle. And then I got Herodotus, a translation into English of Herodotus that I have never read. It's in 2 volumes. That's going to be kind of weird on its own. Heavily illustrated. That's fun. Then we got The Republic of Sin by David Greenberg. Oh, Spin. Sorry, Freudian slip there. All about the presidency. Don't know if I'll read it. If I'll read it before or after we put the finishing touches on the Books of Power, but I think I'm going to want it. I think I'm going to want to reread the whole thing. Then we have the Shakespeare Conspiracy. Who was the Stratford man? We have Ender'S Game and Speaker for the Dead, a science fiction book club with one of these built-in cloth bookmarks there. Don't think I've ever seen this before. We have New Arrivals, Old Encounters, a collection of short stories by Brian Aldiss. It does not have his most famous short story, but it's got a lot of them, and a lot of them I haven't read. I had found Unconditional Surrender by Evelyn Waugh in a nice old hardcover. And I found Rogue Mail by Jeffrey Household. A thriller. And I will give it a try. And that's it. That is your Brattle book haul for closing in on the end of November. I don't know if I'll be back to the Brattle this month. If I do, I will take you with me. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.